Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss the birth charts for both Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. I'm also going to be discussing synastry or compatibility between their charts. And so this talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. All right, so yeah, I usually say, grab a beverage, your favorite beverage, but I have a feeling this is going to be a long talk, so you might want to grab some snacks too. But let's start going through what we got here. All right, a few announcements and orientation for those of you who are new to the channel. So auto dubbing is available on this channel in various languages listed here. The newest ones are Dutch, Polish, and Korean. Also, the big astrological news this month, coming up in about 10 days, is eclipses are coming. So it's always, with eclipses, it's always expect the unexpected. And actually, we'll be discussing an eclipse that's part of the history or relationship timeline for Taylor and Travis. And note that I said expect the unexpected, not expect the worst. Okay, so some people expect the worst, and that's not always true, but definitely strange and unusual things tend to happen during eclipses. So I have a bunch of videos related to eclipses to help you work with that energy as best as you can. So symbolism of Rahu and Ketu, the nodes of the moon, symbolism of sun, symbolism of moon. You need those 4 planets to line up to get an eclipse. Also, specifically a lunar solar eclipses grahan video, auspicious timing or muhurta of eclipses, and then mantras for Rahu, Ketu eclipses, and mantras for sun in case you want to develop a mantra practice for eclipses. All my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are in my consults playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on the subject if you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists. So this type of video about famous people and their compatibility is going to go into my already developed birth charts for famous people playlist. But this is my first Synastry video, so I'm going to put up a new Kundali Milan or Synastry birth chart compatibility playlist that I'll be slotting this into. But there are other playlists as well. If you do like to learn astrology by looking at the birth charts of famous people, places, and moments in time, check out my birth chart archive list 2025 video where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. So some of the latest videos I posted, in case you missed any, birth charts for Jeff Bezos and Amazon, Rohini Nakshatra or the favorite star, full moon or Purnima on 1st of February 2026, and then planetary transits or go chart for February 2026. I have listed at the bottom of the slide a bunch of videos that I consider foundational videos. So especially if you're new to Vedic astrology and want to learn or get more out of talks like this, these videos at the bottom of the slide are the ones I would start with first to get a solid foundation. Okay, so why did I decide to go through their charts? They got engaged August of 2025, so that popped up on my radar. Okay, now I admit I am not a Swiftie, and I'm also not a big American football fan. So, the thing is, they're so famous, mostly Taylor, I think. And I guess Travis popped up on our radar because of Taylor, but she's so famous that like even if I'm just scrolling through general news, she tends to pop up, But she is considered to be one of the 25 most influential people in the world by according to Forbes magazine. So I was like, I bet she's got a really interesting chart. Okay. The other thing about her chart is that her chart has similarities to the current sky pattern. And if you watch my videos, I tend to choose charts that are similar to the current sky pattern so that you get embodied energies of what the sky is actually doing, okay, rather than it just all being abstract exercise. So there is potentially an issue with her chart. There are a couple of exact birth times floating around on the internet. So I was like, there might be a conflict here. I think I have the right one that I'll be working with today, but that may not be the case. But keep that in mind. But I'll go through in the beginning why I do believe that this is the right birth chart I'm using. And then, but the thing is that Travis's birth chart is exact and verified. So the thing is, I can get information about, his partners through his chart. So I thought, well, that'll help, shore up, what Taylor's chart is looking like. Okay. So another reason is that actually today we have Super Bowl, so it's like the big event in American football today. And then Valentine's Day is next week, so he's a big player in the NFL, National Football League. And then she's sort of the queen of like love songs, right? I mean, that's how I know her. And again, I'm not a Swiftie. Sometimes I don't even know it's her song on the radio. So, but sometimes I just hear it and I'm like, oh, it's a Taylor Swift song. So if you're not into Super Bowl or Valentine's Day, we do also have ENIAC Day right after Valentine's Day on the 15th of February, which is related to the first public demonstration of a computer. Okay, and I actually went through that chart in my February 2026 transits video. So if that's more your speed or more your jam, you might check that out. But just the organization for the talk today is I'm going to go through Taylor's chart first, then Travis's chart, the synastry between them, and then I'm also going to talk about important dates in their relationship timeline. All right, so here we go. If I can. All right, so here's Taylor Swift's chart, or at least the one that I believe it is, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But I just want to give you a chance to look at her chart without the markings and notes that I usually add to these charts. But she was born on December 13th, 1989. And this chart is based on the 8:36 a.m. Birth time that I've seen floating around, that I believe is the right one. If not correct, pretty close. It makes a lot of sense, as we'll talk about. And she was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, United States. Okay, so why do I feel like this might be the right birth time for her? Well, the other possible birth time that I saw floating around was 5:17 a.m. Okay, so it's about 3 hours 3 hours earlier. So 3 hours earlier, what that does is it gives us a chart for Scorpio. Because in this chart, and if you're not familiar, this is a North Indian style chart. So the top diamond in the middle, that's what we call the first house, the rising sign, the ascendant, and also in Sanskrit, the lugna. Okay, those are all different names for the same thing. And as you can see, she's got Mercury and Saturn right at the top there. And in the bottom corner of the ascendant, she's got a little 9. That little 9 refers to the ninth constellation of the zodiac, which is Sagittarius. So she would be a Sagittarius rising or a Danu Lugna, what we would say in Sanskrit. Okay. To get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise, inclusively from the first house. So the second house is that upside down triangle in the upper left corner with Rahu and Venus, and then the 10 in the bottom corner. That 10 refers to the 10th constellation of the zodiac, which is Capricorn, or Mara in Sanskrit. Okay. So, yeah. So if we change this time by 3 hours, instead of having Sagittarius at the top, that would give us Scorpio at the top, okay, or Vrishika in Sanskrit. And the thing is that it also gives us a nakshatra of Vishaka. Okay, so nakshatra, if you're not familiar, is a lunar mansion. There are about 27 of them in Vedic astrology. They all have different energies and deities associated with them. So every night the moon passes through a different one, and after 27 nights, you get a lunar month, more or less. Okay, so Sun with Mars in its own sign of Scorpio. It's a very strong energy where both Sun and Mars are fire planets and they're leadership planets. And that's true of her, but her presentation physically would be quite different. Okay. Also, Sun and Mars, we could potentially see that as her like a career chart if we wanted to do that. But the thing is, like Sun and Mars at the top, if that was her rising sign, not just her Sun chart, would kind of give more of a vibe of like G.I. Jane, like almost like a military type of energy. Because Vishaka Nakshatra is all about victory at all costs, and Sun is in a nakshatra called Jesta, which is about protection. So especially Sun and Mars together would be a lot of like fiery protection, also potentially management, because they're both leadership points. Sun is like president or king, and Mars is like the CEO. Okay, which may be true because she's sort of like boss lady, right? I mean, she's top 25 influential people in the world. Um, Yeah, the other thing, so that's one thing, that it was like, I don't think that's the right birth time for her, 5:17 a.m. The other thing is that if you spin the chart so it's Scorpio rising instead of Sagittarius rising, is all of the benefics, Venus, Jupiter, and a foolish moon are in negative houses. And that also, I don't think, is great or appropriate for her because she's done really well. And especially like Venus is the, planet related to like art and creativity, which is all her, her whole gestalt, right? So I don't think the 5:17 a.m. is correct, but the 8:36 time works pretty well. But again, keep in mind that this may not be correct, but it seems to work. So as I start going through the lugna, the first house, I think you'll see why that may be so. But it also seems to fit a lot of her life. So, okay, so as I mentioned, her chart is similar to the current sky pattern. This is her chart, and then I have in the first chart here, and the second chart is the current sky pattern. And this was for 6th of February 2026. And I oriented so that it was also Sagittarius rising so that we could see the similarities here. Okay. So you can see in her main chart, she has Saturn at the top, and Saturn is aspecting 10 houses away to the 10th house. So the first house is the lugna, and that's related to the whole person, like the general physicality and the general personality of somebody. And then Saturn is aspecting the 10th house of work and reputation. Okay. So so that's in the first chart. In the second chart, Saturn is not in the lugna, but it's in the fourth house aspecting the lugna in the 10th house. So she's got Saturn, on both her lugna, first house and 10th house. Okay. Currently, but then again when she was born. The other thing that's very similar is that both of these charts you can see in Gemini, which is across the wave from Sagittarius here. She's got Jupiter retrograde. That underline the line under Jupiter means it's retrograde in Gemini. Okay, so that's exactly the same position for Jupiter here. Okay. More similarities is that she's got Sun and Mars conjunct. Okay, in her birth chart, Sun and Mars are in the 12th house, and here in the current sky pattern, Sun and Mars are together in the second house. Okay? And then in addition, she's got Rahu and Venus conjunct. In the first chart, it's in her second house, and Venus and Rahu are in her third house. Okay, so there's quite a few similarities between her chart and the current sky pattern. Okay, so let's start to dig into her chart a little bit. So again, her lugna is a Sagittarius or Danu, which is a dual fire sign. So she's gonna be all about sort of mixed or sometimes even contrary actions. Okay. The other thing around her chart is that she has a Papakartri yoga. Okay. So the Papakartri yoga is a combination. So a Papakartri specifically is when you have malefic planets on either side, or actually not either, but both sides of the lugna. Okay. And what that does is it creates it indicates that people are going to have this kind of pretty important obstacles that they have to overcome in life. So as well as she's done in the world, she's had to overcome a lot. Okay. The Lugna Nakshatra is in Purvashada. So this is important because this is again giving an overall gestalt for her. So Purvashada is symbolized by a winnowing basket. So one of those baskets you might have seen like in a movie. That's where I've seen them. That more traditional ways of doing farming, they put the wheat or other grains in the winnowing basket and they shake the winnowing basket and then it separates the edible from inedible parts. So she's somebody who's going to be sorting through a lot of stuff. Okay. And the thing is, the Purvashada energy, the Lugna is, the ascendant is in Purvashada, but also these two planets, Mercury and Saturn. Okay. So she's got a lot of this sorting energy going on. Okay. The other thing is the star of Purvashada is Venus. Okay. And Venus, again, is the planet of arts and luxury and aesthetics and the finer things of life. And that's pretty much what her whole career is about, right? Um, so the sorting process is related to, a creative endeavor. So Mercury is a planet that represents words and speech and planning and writing, and Saturn is about structure and how do I say, like process and endurance and that sort of thing. So when you have this Mercury and Saturn together in Purvashada, this is her sorting through words or speech and finding, like sorting through structures of those things. So when I saw these together, the word that came to mind is a wordsmith. That's what she does because she's both a singer and a songwriter, and that also fits her dual, you know, a dual air fire sign here because she's got two actions. She's not only a singer, but she's a songwriter. She's actually doing, she has two jobs actually, even though they're related. Um, so Saturn is there, and then let's see the other thing. So Mercury is quite strong, though. Saturn's in what we would call ordinary condition. It's not particularly strong, but Mercury's quite strong because it has Digbala directional strength. The other thing about Mercury is that it's the lord of the seventh house. So the seventh house has gone 7 houses away, meaning we call that bhavat bhavam. Uh, so that's going to mean that there's going to be one seventh house issue after another coming to her. And the seventh house is related to personal relationships like spouse like partner, business partnerships, as well as independent business. Okay. So that's the thing is we know that about her life. I mean, she's had many personal relationships. That's what she sings about. That's what she writes about is, and, that's how her career got started was a lot of like, heartbreak stories, heartbreak songs and that sort of thing. So she's sorting through the words to design these songs. But she's also got this very strong Mercury, kind of supporting that. Um, the thing about Mercury, though, is I don't think it's without issue here. Um, Oh, and that's the thing too. I didn't weave in the bhava more. So again, all this singing, songwriting, it's going to it's going to involve one personal relationship after another, one business partner after another, one creative project after another. And as far as I know, from the very beginning, and she started her career when she was young. As far as I know, she's made a point of whenever she negotiated with her business partners that she would do all the songwriting. I believe that's true, but. Um, And that'll actually be important when we talk more about her career. So again, we're just trying to getting like a general feel for who she is as a person before we dive into their relationship. The thing though is that you can see Mercury is creeping up on Saturn here. They're almost in the same degree, so they're actually heading into planetary war. So even though it's not obvious, when planets go into planetary war, they're both stabilized. Okay. And also that war energy, can just signal battles and fighting. Okay. And then Mercury and Saturn are aspecting the seventh house. So again, all these personal, professional partnerships and projects has not gone without issue. Okay, it's not all been smooth sailing. Um, so this kind of like Mercury Saturn. Did I weave that in yet? Not quite. Well, let me add that in before I kind of went back and forth with. So actually, my process with her chart was very much like a Purva shot. I kind of kept going back and forth. So she's got the Mercury and Saturn Purva Shada in the top here. In the seventh house, she's got Jupiter retrograde and Moon, a foolish Moon. Okay. Now, the thing about Mercury and Jupiter is that they're in what we call parivartana exchange of houses. So Mercury's in the sign of Jupiter and Jupiter's in the sign of Mercury. So you can essentially exchange them. So that means, and beside that, which will make them both stronger because they'll end up in their own house. Okay. Bringing more strength to the first house as well as the seventh house. So that means that she and her partners are going to be strong, even though, again, there's going to be some arguments going on here. Um, Jupiter brings speech, so that brings more of the speech energy. Moon is also involved. Moon relates to the public and also feelings and emotions and thoughts. So Mercury and Moon are the two mind planets. Mercury's a logical, analytical mind, processing mind, and Moon is the feeling, intuitive planet. Jupiter and Moon together can give child psychology. Okay, which is again interesting because that's when she started her career when she was very young. Okay. Also, Jupiter and Moon together can give you something like poetry, which is essentially like the lyrics she writes for her songs, sort of like poetry set to music. Okay. But the other thing is that, again, and Jupiter is retrograde, so there's some strength there. Moon is fullish, pretty full, so it's also got some strength. But the thing is that both of those planets are in a nakshatra called Ardra, which is symbolized by a drop of water. Now, that drop of water can be from either a teardrop, indicating sadness, and again, more psychology, or the other thing is it can indicate like a storm cloud, like a drop of water from a storm cloud. Either way, it's stormy energy, emotional energy, psychological energy. So this kind of, reinforces this notion, like the things that she's, structuring, sorting through words and structures, you know, for the reason why she's doing that is because that's part of her process of sorting through emotions and relationships and disappointments and sadness and that sort of thing. So that fits pretty well with who she is and what she's known for, So that's why I think this chart works pretty well. Again, it may not be correct, but it works, I think, pretty well. So the other thing here is that I put quirky here. The reason why quirky is that Jupiter and Moon, they're in Ardra, and Ardra is ruled by Rahu, which is a planet that indicates ambition, but it's the north node of the moon. Both of the nodes of the moon bring this kind of hidden, unexpected, strange, unusual energy. As I mentioned, we're going to eclipse season, so it's like expect the unexpected. So she's going to have a quirky quality to her, and also the work that she does, in terms of her songs. And I think that's part of why she stands out, of the crowd in terms of artists, right? And I remember actually seeing her, I think, when she was pretty young, getting onto TV, or at least she came up on my radar. I guess she was getting big enough that I wasn't looking for her. I've seen her when I think she was still a teenager, and she was more quirky then. I mean, she was kind of, I think, going more for the country music, genre, and she was wearing like big cowboy boots and kind of flowery dresses, and had her hair flowing naturally and stuff like that. So a little more like homegrown type of feel, whereas now she's very polished and stuff like that. So she's kind of commercialized herself to make herself, I think, a little bit more generalizable for audiences. But, um, and she was like the singer-songwriter, sort of awkward teen. So that's kind of where she started with all this. And also, like, I think she is fairly bookish because she's got not only Mercury and Moon, the two mind planets here, but she's got Jupiter and Mercury, which are both education-related planets. So Mercury's related to writing, and Jupiter's related to teacher. Mercury's related to student. So, yeah, she's got all that going on. The other thing is that Saturn at the top here is the lord of both the second house and the third house. So the second house relates to speech, and the third house relates to physical, nonverbal communication. So again, she's communicating both verbally and nonverbally through her sorting through of words into new formulations about disappointments in relationships, um, as part of her general, identity. Yeah. So let me just see here. I think I covered most of it. So let's see what we have on the next slide. Okay, so that black kind of curved line at the top, that's just indicating that kartari yoga. Because again, she has the malefic planets on both sides of her lagna. And let's see. Okay, so we looked at her. So that's important because we want to know who she is before we look at her relationship dynamics and relationship outcomes. And then again, we're going to see what we can see about the blending specifically with Travis Kelce. So then, again, because we're looking at relationships and synastry here, that's the main thing we're looking at. We would look at her seventh house. So her seventh house lord is Mercury. Okay. So again, it's going to be strong because the Mercury and Jupiter and parivartana. So there's going to be strength there. So she's going to draw, strong partners. But again, this whole lineup of Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Moon Um, there's going to be a lot of speech because Mercury and Jupiter are both speech and a lot of emotional processing, arguments and stuff like that because Mercury and Saturn are going into war. Um, so even though she's, I mean, beautiful and talented and rich and famous, all these things, like, probably most people would be like flattered just to say hello to her. Um, I'm not sure she would be everybody's cup of tea. Let's just put it that way. Because I think her general relationship dynamic is to, all this sorting through of emotional and mental effects of disappointments in relationships. I think that's going to happen not just for her personally, but professionally. So, I mean, professionally, but also personally. So, she may be somebody who wants or needs to do a lot of verbal processing of relationship dynamics, which again, some people might be interested and up for, and other people might, not. Okay. So that's part of her general relationship dynamics. The other thing is that, we have this war going on or coming up for Mercury and Saturn, which will, again, create some sort of energies of battles and instability, which again are shored up, I would say a lot by this Mercury Jupiter parivartana. From the 12th house, we have Mars aspecting the 7th house. So Mars is it's a initiator planet. It's a rebellious planet. It's also a fighting planet. So especially the partners might be in kind of fighting mode, and Mars is in a nakshatra called Vishaka, which is all about victory, but at all costs. So there are going to be times when I think her partners, both personal and professional, buckle down and fight back. The other thing is that Mars and Jupiter together can signal legal issues. Okay, so I think there might be potential legal issues with partners as well as, again, personal and professional fronts. Um, Her seventh house. So again, there's strength here, but you can see, like, again, there's a lot of emotional processing. There's battles. There's victory, but at definitely with some, pretty serious costs. There's sadness. We've got two planets in the Ardra sadness nakshatra, but Saturn also can bring, to the mind and emotions like skepticism, doubt, fear, anxiety, depression. So again, there's a lot of, not just through Mercury and Moon and Jupiter and Moon and Ardra, but Saturn also. Um, you can see that there's a lot here. Okay. But the thing is, there is a Jupiter Moon combination that gives a pretty strong Gajacesari yoga, which is a networking yoga, which again, she's going to have this humongous network of people, both public and private, that, all these people who listen to her music around the world and see her concerts and all that sort of stuff. That also means she's going to have, with all these planets, five planets essentially in the seventh house, she's going to have a lot of opportunities for different kinds of partnerships, personal and professional. As she's again sorting and weaving words into structures, writing, publishing her poetry set to music for the public, networking, sadness, psychology, young mind. So again, I think that at some point might have been uh, maybe a rough point for her. Again, I haven't followed her career, but I would imagine since she started so young and she kind of initially marketed herself or presented herself as sort of the young, quirky, teenage, singer-songwriter. When she matured, she might have had to really work hard to make that transition to a more mature uh, artist, who's interested in more mature, maybe content or feelings or that sort of thing, and then bridge the gap between her uh, loyal fan base and then potentially new fans. I'm guessing, but I don't know. The thing that was a Saturn also can bring distance. Well, actually, Mercury and Saturn can both bring distance. Saturn can bring distance because of physical reasons. So again, if she's always on tour, if she's always like off processing her emotions about relationships and you know um, writing her songs and all that, um, physically there's going to be a lot of distance between her and partners potentially. And so the logistics are going to have to be sorted out. Physical logistics are going to have to be sorted out. Okay. And may not always happen. Okay. So there might be, again, there's a lot of opportunities here so some of them she's going to have to say no to. The other thing is that there can be, I would say, a mental and emotional distance because Saturn is with Mercury. On its own, Mercury can bring a distance, but more distance of the mind. Because people who tend to have a very strong Mercury, especially related to their first and seventh house, can be so in their head that they can be a bit disconnected from their feeling body and their emotional body and that sort of thing. So, and that's it's helpful for her songwriting process because it gives her objectivity for diving into the thoughts and feelings about, disappointments in relationships. But that's also going to play out in her real life relationships, not just what she's sort of processing on her own. The other thing about this lineup of planets in her chart is that, what's going to tie her potentially with a partner? Well, it's going to be a meeting of the minds. It's also going to be emotional because Mercury and Moon are there. Also, I would say stability, physical stability, and also mental, emotional stability, I would say. Venus is not in this lineup on the 1-7 axis. So I, not that Venus is involved. It is because Venus is the star, Mercury and Saturn and the Lugna are in the star of Venus. So Venus is there, but kind of more as a background. And then also Jupiter and Moon are in a star of Rahu, and Rahu and Venus are conjoined. So Venus is there, but I think more in a more subtle way. Yeah, and then Mars is part of the picture because it's aspecting the seventh house, and Mars is a kind of like a passion libido planet. So her partners might display that, exhibit that more than she is because Mars is not involved with her Lugna here. She might again be a bit more distant, sorting, more of a thinker, whereas her partners, especially with this Mars Jupiter combination, that can give like enthusiasm, be more outgoing. Yeah. She might be more reserved. But again, so I think she's seeking stability, mentally, emotionally, also home. Moon relates to home. But again, there's going to be some fights here, legal potentially. But again, this is going to be her primary relationship dynamic. The other thing is that her ruling planet is Jupiter, and Jupiter has, direct interactions with Mercury, Saturn, and Moon. So she's going to be interacting directly with a lot of people. Okay, and Mercury relates to the seventh house of partners. It relates to the 10th house of work, reputation. Let's see, Saturn relates to the second house of family, the third house of siblings and neighbors, and the moon relates to, let's see, eighth house here. That's again more deep psychology, I would say. Um, yeah, so let's see. So the other thing to note is that she is currently in her Saturn dasha, okay? Which will bring more of this kind of distance energy, physical distance energy. The other thing is generally Saturn in general symbolizes things like obstacles, delays, chronic problems, that sort of thing. So she's currently running that dasha, which is a little bit odd. Because she was also in her Saturn dasha when she met Travis, and then they got engaged. So, you know, things happen when they happen, but that's also going to be more part of the energy of her relationships during this time. Now, before Saturn is Mercury. Okay, so no, sorry, before Saturn is Jupiter. Sorry, before Saturn is the Jupiter period. Okay. Now Jupiter is all over her chart. Okay, and Jupiter they're almost like the opposite energy. Jupiter is about optimism and expansion, um, hope and, all this sort of thing. And Jupiter, because it's in parivartana with Mercury, Jupiter has aspects 3, 5, 7, and 9 houses away. So Jupiter is always on 4 houses, but when you flip it into the first house, it's going to be on 2 more houses. So Jupiter is on half the houses here. And when she moved into her Jupiter period is when things really blew up for her. Again, all of her, because it's going to be, Jupiter is going to be on her 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 houses. I mean, that's a lot of relationships, partners, management, creative energy, that sort of thing. And now she's in Saturn. So she is basically things are cooling down for her, in a lot of ways, in many ways. So, that's also, I think, important for the relationship she has with Travis. Um, yeah, the other thing is that because Saturn and Jupiter are on the, again, Mercury and Moon, Saturn again is like a contraction, cold, distance, delays, obstacles, anxiety, doubt, and Jupiter's the opposite, where it's like you know, happy and funny and expansive and optimistic, hopeful. So there's going to be a lot of the relationships she's processing have a lot of a roller coaster element, but also her life and partnerships in general. So a lot of high highs and low lows in her personal and business life. Okay, so I started talking about her dasha. She's currently in Saturn, but her dasha, she was born into Rahu, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. So that's also interesting because Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's like a Saraswati yoga. She does have a Saraswati yoga in her chart, which indicates both education and creativity. Rahu is going to bring ambition, unusual ambition. But when she starts off her life in Rahu, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, she's going to be activating Saraswati Yoga, the parivartana exchange of houses between Mercury and Jupiter, also the Gajikesari Yoga networking. So she was born into a planetary period that's basically foretelling her unusual ambition in terms of proliferating her creativity. Okay. Now, the dasha sequence for her is, again, she was born into Rahu, and she ran that from birth to 14 years old. Now, Rahu's in her second house of speech. Rahu is in, let me see, in Dhanishta. Dhanishta is symbolized by a drum, that nakshatra, and can indicate music, okay? Rahu can symbolize like unusual hidden things. So this might be like unusual music or ambitious music, also like hidden music or like costumes, for example. And then Venus is there. So Venus is in Uttarashada nakshatra, which is all about a sudden victory. So she's in this like ambitious. So up until 14 years of age, and I think she was interested in like musical theater and that sort of thing. And she was like going to these different I guess, music companies and stuff like that, and she got rejected by all of them. Um, but what they liked was her lyrics more than her voice. So then she kind of reconfigurated things and kind of put her songwriting forward first and made sure that was part of her business deals that she made. And then that's when things really took off for her. And then she was sort of taken under the wing of some of these music execs, and it sounded like, I don't really understand it, but it sounded like almost like how I hear like young Olympic stars get trained, where they're young, like teenagers, and so sometimes they'll leave home, um, their family home, and go live with their coach so that they can get all this training to really like win at their. And it sounded like that sort of thing, but for young music stars. So, so the thing is that, just imagine like a young teenager or even preteen who's distant from their family, potentially, and going through this hardcore like professional musical training at a young age. That's a lot of pressure. um, so anyway, that's what she was also in musical theater, which makes sense with this Rahu and Venus. This is like artistic costumes and a stage and that sort of thing. Ambition there. Then she started running Jupiter from ages 14 to 30. So again, that's when Jupiter was all over her chart through this parivartana with Mercury. Now Jupiter's on her 1-7 axis, but then it's also going to be on her 1-7 houses, but also on her 3, 5, 9, and 11. So again, expansion, charisma, networking, it all just went gangbusters during that time. And now she's in Saturn, which is on the first house, also the 3rd, 7th, and 10th. So first house is self, third house is creativity, seventh house is relationships, and 10th house is work and reputation. And she's going to be running this until she's 49. So, and her current dasha is Saturn, K2, Jupiter. K2 is another kind of separationist planet, and she's got K2 in the 8th house of chronic long-term problems, and K2 is in a nakshatra called a Shlesha. So, which is about kind of, unusual, basically unusual attention. So, and the 8th house is deep psychology. So, from the beginning, she's always been a kid who's been interested in getting attention, like a lot of attention from a lot of people. So, that's deep in her psychology. So, she might be contemplating, new ways of getting attention because she's feeling the slowdown. What was interesting too, I looked it up. I was like, there must have been some pretty big shift in her career when she shifted from Jupiter to Saturn, and apparently she shifted management companies. So at that time, so yeah, that all figures out to what I was seeing in her chart. Okay, so back to relationships for her. But those the shot periods are important because when I look at the amsas or subdivisional charts, just knowing generally where she's at and where the planets are leading her. Again, we'll see how those match or not with Travis because, again, if you're looking for a relationship matching, you kind of want to know like what sort of timeline they're on physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, career-wise. So that's part of the, it's pretty comprehensive here. So now let's look at her relationship interactions generally. So again, she's got this parivartana with the 1st and 7th lords, a lot of direct interaction, a lot of verbal, abstract, processing, probably some distance here, but strong partners, probably more extroverted than she is, more outgoing than she is. This Venus Rahu conjunction will bring unusual creative partners who are very different from herself. And even this Mercury Jupiter opposition here, that will bring partners who are very different from herself. Okay. And I would think, I don't know either one of them very much, but just as a first pass, I was like, well, it's kind of an interesting, she's like the queen of love songs, and Travis is like, an NFL king person. So that seems pretty different. I mean, even though they're both famous and rich or whatever. So yeah. But having so much opposite energy, that brings attraction, but also tension. So that's also part of the relationship dynamic here. Then in the 12th house, we have Sun and Jesta. I mentioned that briefly, conjunct with the Swam, Mars, and Vishaka. This is in her 12th house. Okay, her 12th house is related to losses, expenditures, and also like remote places. So Sun and Mars are again the two leadership planets. This is very strong leadership, and I would say management, and I would say strong men. And also you can see Sun is the lord of the 9th house, which is father and authority. So there's going to be a mixed bag here in terms of the Sun Mars coming. This is going to be very strong men or management, not necessarily men, but probably men, who are like, winning at all costs, even her in her childhood. Okay. And protective as well. But there's going to be losses here, because that's also going to skew her relationship dynamic with, in personal realm. I mean, all these like really strong, aggressive management types who organized this whole training program for her when she was young. But at the same time, it's going to create this like world tour, world presence for her. So it's a mixed bag, both losses and also And there's also some protection of losses here because Mars is swan in the 12th house. So again, losses through very strong administrative men, but also gains through like a worldwide career and reputation and fame. So it works both ways for her, yeah. The other thing, so Sun relates to father, symbolizes father, and Mars relates to siblings. The other thing is that Mars is lord of the 5th house of children. Okay, so the fact that her 5th lord has gone to the 12th house, even though it's strong, it's swats in its own sign, that can indicate problems with children. Okay. Now, this is going to become a bigger deal as we keep going forward. Okay, so keep track of that. Mars also relates to enemies, and the 12th house relates to hidden enemies. So these strong administrative men, management men who were part of her, I assume, young years, and generally speaking, were actually, even though they seem like protective authorities, were secret enemies of hers. I mean, if they weren't secret enemies, I don't think she would have changed. I'm guessing she wouldn't have changed management companies when she hit her Saturn dasha, right? Um, the other thing is that even though Mars is in its own house, which will give some protection of inanimate things, it will not protect the people related to Mars, which for her is siblings, enemies, 5th house romance, and 5th house children. Yeah, so keep that in mind as well. Let's see. Okay, so now I'm getting into the subcharts for her so we can get more detail about what's going on for her. Now, these subcharts, if you're not familiar, are also called amsas, subdivisional charts. These are derived by slicing and dicing the main chart into smaller charts, and they look more specifically at certain areas of life. They're mostly used for timing, though, so keep that in mind. And then you always want to kind of see what you see in these charts and tie it back, bring it back, integrate it with the main chart. So here we have what we call the Navamsha or D9, which is specific information about the spouse and partnerships, which is, again, what we're really mostly focused on. Again, it may seem like I'm going down these other roads, which are not relevant, but again, as the story unfolds here between, individually and then between these two, you'll see why I'm talking about these other things that don't seem directly relevant to synastry, right? Compatibility, but so just to remind you, her dasha sequence, again, Rahu, Jupiter, and then Saturn. She's currently in Saturn. And then she just, and I put Mercury Ketu here. When she, let me just double check this. When she got together with Travis, she was in Saturn Mercury, and now she's currently in Saturn Ketu. So this Saturn Mercury Ketu energy has been on her, influencing her life for the last 2 years while she's been involved with Travis. Now, again, Saturn, Mercury, and Ketu, those are the 3 separationist planets of the 9 classic Jyotish planets. Saturn is physical distance. Mercury is mental distance. Ketu is like unusual, unexpected, out of the blue type of distance. Okay. So, again, it's kind of a weird time, for her to be getting into a relationship with these kind of planets. Okay. But the thing is, she might be doing this objectively, especially if she's feeling Saturn and she's feeling, it's because Saturn's in her Lugna here. She's going to be feeling older. She's going to be feeling more mature. I mean, she's what, 30 something, 36 or something like that, right? I mean, I'm sure she's been on the road for, 20 plus years. I'm sure she's tired, physically tired. That's a lot, these mega concerts she puts on and all the touring and travel. I mean, I don't even know how she does it. I mean, but the thing is, I think she's feeling it now. Okay. And then also the creativity, as I mentioned, Saturn is aspecting her 3rd as a creativity. Her creativity might be drying up. Partnerships might be drying up. Work might be drying up. Okay, because Saturn is in all those houses for her, and she's feeling it. So now she's like, maybe it's time to, recognize that I'm maturing here and I'm in a different phase of life. And also again, Saturn brings fear and anxiety. So she might be concerned about getting older and, having a partner, having kids and that sort of thing. Okay. So, The other thing to know about Saturn, Mercury, Ketu is that's the dasha sequence. So after she's done with the Saturn main period, Mahadasha, then she goes into Mercury, then she goes into Ketu. So what I did was I circled all these planets, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Ketu, on her subcharts. So we could see specifically the energy she's in now, and then where things are headed for her, like probably most of the rest of her life, okay? So again, this is an Navamsha D9. So first off, there are 3 planets in the Lugna here, the rising sign. So Rahu, Mercury, and then Jupiter's aspecting here. So just the fact that there are 3 planets in the Lugna, that means this is an important chart. Now, all these grahas are well placed, so that's a good first pass. But again, when she was, let's see, when she was in Jupiter, Jupiter was, aspecting this whole chart, and things were much more optimistic for her. Now that she's in Saturn, look, Saturn is kind of one off to the side from this 1-7 axis. The other thing is Saturn is the lord of the 7th house, and the 7th house lord has gone 8 houses away. 8 houses away from the 7th lord is uh, chronic problems, uh, chronic health, endings, that sort of thing. I mean, it's just the fact, just from her shifting from Jupiter to Saturn, there's going to be a big shift in terms of optimism and opportunity versus skepticism, doubt, and fear going from the Jupiter period to Saturn period. Okay. Um, Again, maturity and obstacles and that sort of thing. And Saturn is on her 4th house of happiness. Besides the second house is family. It's aspecting her 4th house of home and lineage. It's aspecting her 8th house of deep psychology, and it's aspecting her 11th house of groups and income. So even in terms of relationship, this Saturn period is, creating some fear and doubt and slowdown. She's feeling slowdown here. Okay. Um, the thing is that Saturn is also, it's aspecting the 8th house where Sun and Venus are. Sun is career, Venus is exalted here, but it's slowing down her creative career. And Sun and Venus are in the 8th house, which indicates, changes and endings. So she's feeling it. I mean, she's still, on top of the world as far as the rest of us are concerned. But for her, relative to, and again, this is probably a skewed perspective because, of her kind of non-traditional training, professional training as a teenager, being away from home, very young, being surrounded by all these like high-powered professional manager people. I mean, if that's what, it's kind of like when you hit your high point early in life, it's like, where do you go from there? So, Mercury is on the 1-7. See, Mercury and Jupiter are on the 1-7 axis again. So again, cerebral, heady, and then K2, and then she's running. So she's got the Saturn she's running now, and then she met Travis and Mercury, which is not super strong. It's okay. And then K2. So you can see where Mercury and K2 are on the 1-7 axis. But again, Mercury and K2, it's like unusual thoughts, unusual decisions and that sort of thing. She may not be making. She might be making objective decisions that seem a little bit, again, odd or being derived because of the Saturnness of what she's experiencing in that Mahadasha, that planetary period. So, yeah, but the Saturn is, it's going to be an unusual time for her to get involved based on this, but she wants to, I think, she sees a slowdown happening, feels a slowdown happening, and probably wants a slowdown and find stability in her relationships because her lifestyle and hasn't really been amenable to that. Let's see. So what's also interesting in this chart is Mars and Sun are in negative houses. They're not in the same negative house, but Mars and Sun relate to men. And Venus, so again, Mars and Sun represent fire and passion, men and leadership. So for her, it's not really about passion, and this fiery passion type of thing. She's going to be more of a, thinker, speaker, processing type, kind of quirky type person. And you're seeing that in the D9 for her as well as her main chart. The other thing is that Venus and Moon are not on the 1-7 axis. So whatever kind of unusual decision she's making here is not going to be, it's going to be more objective than emotional, which we're seeing again here and in the main chart. So how was I looking at this? Oh, Saturn, Mercury, K2. Oh, so after Saturn, K2, she's going to run Saturn, Venus, which sometimes when people run their Venus, just because it's Venus and it's like planet of love and romance and that sort of thing, sometimes they get into relationships just because they're running Venus. She's going to be running Saturn, Venus, Rahu from July 21st of this year until February 8th of 2028. But again, for her, based on this chart, and even her main chart, because Venus isn't, well, Venus is the Lord, the star of Saturn and Mercury, and then it is, again, indirectly related to her 1-7 axis in her main chart. But in this chart, it's not part of the, 1-7 axis here. Then she's going to run Saturn, Venus, Jupiter, February 8th of 2028 to August 1st, 2028. I was seeing that as going to be a better time for her, just because she's running Jupiter, which is a benefic planet. The thing is, because she's in this Saturn, Mercury, K2, and I think maybe making decisions partly out of fear, she might push for the Saturn, Venus, Rahu, because sometimes when people run Venus, Rahu, again, that's like this, ambition or even obsession related to love and relationships. She might end up getting, I think the reason why I went this, I went through so much stuff, I forgot why I went through it. But I think it's, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, I think I was trying to figure out when she might actually get married, because they haven't announced a marriage date yet. So the marriage date might be between these dates, 21st July 2026 and February 8th, 2028. It could also be, for her, a better time for her to get married. I don't know that she wants to wait that long, though. It would be like after that, potentially. February 8th through 2028. The only problem with the February 2028 to August 2028 period is that Saturn. No, wait, let me just double think this. That may not be a good time, actually. That Saturn, Venus, Jupiter may not be a good time, because in February of 2028, Saturn is shifting from her 4th house of home, where it is currently in Pisces. It's going to shift into her debilitation sign of Aries in her 5th house, which is related to romance, children, aspect her 7th house of relationships, aspect her 11th house of groups and income, and then aspect her 2nd house of home. So that it's probably going to be better for her to go, in terms of the position of Saturn in her main chart, the Saturn, Venus, Rahu period would potentially be better. Because then when Saturn shifts into her 5th house, it's going to be a tough time. Yeah. And again, remember I said her 5th house lord is Mars, and it's gone to the 12th house. So there's indications she may have trouble with having kids or with kids generally. And so, yeah, so the timing here for her marriage, especially because she's running, again, in terms of what they symbolize, Saturn, Mercury, K2, not really, again, sort of odd planets to be getting into like a major life relationship like this. And then what they're doing in her main chart and here, it's tricky, The other thing is her Chitra grahas, or planets of vulnerability, are Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So Jupiter represents children. Saturn is delays and obstacles. Mars is, and Mars twice over. So, Mars is children for her, related to children and also men. Um, So yeah, so again, you're probably starting to see what I'm seeing here is that there's a lot of confluence. It seems like in terms of there definitely being some sticking points and timing issues here, and getting things together, sorting through physical issues to make things workable, for her personal life and building a family. The other thing, okay, so on top of that, is that she will begin her sadisati in April 2030. So that's not too far off. I mean, that's only what, 4 years off. But that's like fairly early on in a marriage. Assuming they get married before then. Sati Sati is when Saturn transits before, during, and after your natal moon. So since her moon is in Gemini, once Saturn moves into Taurus, she's going to go through a 7.5 year period. We all go through this. So 7.5 year period where Saturn's going to cross those signs close to her natal moon. Sati Sati, some people fear it, kind of like eclipses. The thing about Sati Sati is it's often a time when there's a loss of a major support system that's been long standing. Okay. So usually during Sati Sati, and again, it's going to cross her, Saturn's going to cross her. So she's going to start Sati Sati in April 2030, and then 2.5 years later, Saturn's going to go through her seventh house of relationships and partnerships, and then it's going to go into her eighth house of deep psychology. Like you can kind of see, like it's, things are going to be tough for her. Um, yeah. So, and then Saturn, as I mentioned, will enter her first house by aspect, June 2032. So trouble, and that will bring trouble to both self and relationships. Yeah. So challenges there. So again, not super exciting stellar energy here. And again, maybe this isn't the right chart or birth time for her because these subcharts are really finicky in terms of the exact timing. So maybe that's an issue. Sometimes the amsas don't work even if you do have the exact birth time. So that's a possibility too. But again, I'm just feeling like this just seems kind of weird, like I would be looking for like some major benefic, like Venus or Jupiter running or something like that. And again, this when she runs Saturn, Venus, Rahu, that might be the time she gets married. They make a date and go through with their plan. But yeah, the lead up to this is like, not very impressive. Let's just put it that way. Um, okay, so I did mention that, again, these other factors in her life might influence her, again, Synastry with Travis. So let's just go through these. So just to remind you, her dasha sequence is Rahu, Jupiter, and then she's currently in Saturn, Mercury slash K2 periods here. And these three charts are about her career, then public support and income, and then assets. So this is more of her career stuff. Okay. So, now, not too surprising, given she's like, this 25 most influential people in the world list. All three of these charts have three planets in the lugna, so they're all important. Okay. So let's just start at the top here, Dashamsha D10 for Korean reputation. So Saturn is, Saturn and an exalted K2 are not well placed, and she's running Saturn and K2. Okay. So not great news for a career in the moment. Also, there's they're in 3 and 8 houses, so there's changes and endings going on here. Okay, so not the best time in her career, at least under the surface, because some of the stuff she's doing, like I don't know if she's still touring right now or whatever. I think she had a new album out relatively recently. Again, that's stuff that's been in production and launched, but what's going on now in terms of the new stuff in the pipeline? I think that's what this is pointing out to. Then we have a parivartana between Sun and Mars. Okay, so this is like that, Sun and Mars in the 12th house for her natal chart. I mean, very, ambitious management guys, men, it looks like, very important for a career. And Sun and Mars are in her first house of Lugna of self, and then her fifth house of creativity, but also stage. Yeah, so Sun and Mars are also going to bring like fighting, and then Jupiter's aspecting. But so there's going to be like again legal fights, and then Sun and Mars are both aspecting her seventh house. So that's a lot of fighting and ambition and drive related to her first, fifth, and seventh houses. Okay, and then also relates to partners, personal and professional. So uh, between Jupiter and Saturn, you can see Jupiter is in the seventh house. That's a much better positioned planet. Plus, it's a natural benefic versus Saturn. So you can see like there are challenges going on with career and reputation. Okay. Then we have the Ekadamsha D11 for public support and income. This is also awards because she's won like a gazillion music awards, hasn't she? I think she's won like almost everything. So all the grahas are well placed, so that's not too surprising. She has a parivartana between Jupiter and Mars, and the one's 5 houses, so self and stage and creativity houses. And then in the Lugna, she has Jupiter, Mercury, Mars by parivartana, Saturn's there. So this is going to be a major leader, very active, but also legal issues here. And then Saturn is on the first, fifth, eighth, and 11th houses. So, um, the first house is self, the fifth house is creativity stage, the eighth house is psychology, the 11th house is groups. So she was in Jupiter, which was again all over this chart because it was in Parivartana, kind of like her main chart. And that's when she was like racking up, awards and, opportunities and shows and all this kind of stuff. And now she's in Saturn. So it's all cooling down. I mean, she's still, up there because she's still riding on the tail of the energy of her Jupiter dasha, which was so major for her. But it's sort of like for her, it probably feels like she got dropped off a cliff compared to what it was. Okay. Um, what she grew up in, that set the expectation for her. Right? So, and I'm sure it's much, way above baseline than most of us live on. But for her, it's definitely like a downturn. Yeah, and then Jupiter is on the 1-7 axis. So again, this is going to affect all of our partnerships, like be much more uh, supportive of partnerships when she was running Jupiter as opposed to Saturn. Then we have the D4 for assets. So Rahu's not well placed, but she was like, basically preteen or early teen. So that's not too significant. But look, she's got Jupiter Swan, the Lugna here. So you can see like Jupiter is on, when she was running Jupiter, Jupiter's on her 1-7 axis for all these charts, including her main chart. I mean, that's a major shift, in terms of partnerships and relationships. And then, so strong to shut. Now, Saturn in this chart is on the first house, the fourth, the sixth, and 10th. So 1 is self, 4 is happiness, 6 is enemies, and 10 is work. So you can see that when she starts running Saturn, it's going to affect, her whole life in deep ways, even these areas. Yeah. So issues with self, home, happiness, work. On the Lugna, she has Jupiter, Saturn, Moon. So, which is similar to the natal chart. I mean, she had those planets on her natal chart. So this is going to be kind of a mood roller coaster. I mean, Jupiter's, optimism, Saturn's doubt, Moon is emotional mind, and then Moon is a public as well. So, but this is also the assets, right? So her going through all this emotional relationship turmoil, what is actually an asset? Um, even though there are other, drawbacks to it for sure. Then she has Swa K2 with Venus, and again, she's running a subperiod to K2 now in the second house. This is going to be assets through technological music. And I was looking this up because I was like, based on this, it looks like her emotional processing of stuff, which she's always done. And then she's got Mercury and Saturn together. So again, it almost this like because Mercury and Saturn are together, it's almost like Mercury joins Saturn in the top. So you almost kind of recreate in her D4 her natal chart. So this emotional process she does, where she's songwriting and then singing about it, and then the digital assets like the revenue she generates from all the streaming music downloads. 'Cause I don't know how it works in music, but I'm guessing since she was singer and songwriter, she, I don't know, doubles her, I don't know, doubles or triples her percentage of all the income that's derived from all these music sales around the world. I mean, that's her those are her two big assets based on this, you know. So, let's see, strength through digital music, leadership management. And then, you know, she does have Mars Swa in the eighth house or ninth house. So there's going to be, again, aggressive management here. So, well, actually, her whole chart look K2 Swa, Mercury Swa, Sun is Swa, Mars is Swa. So even the planet she's not running or Swa, I mean, that makes this chart, you know, huge for her. And again, I don't know if she's in the top 10 or top 20. I think she's in the top 20 richest people in the world list. Um, and then let's see. But again, with Saturn, you know, a lot of this is going to be slowing down. Then, oh, that's when she switched to she switched from Big Machine Records to UMG in November 2028, and that's when she transitioned from Jupiter to Saturn to Shah. Also, in terms of money, Yogi is Moon, duplicate Yogi, duplicate planet is Venus. So, a lot of wealth derived from the arts and emotions, which we saw, and then Aviyogi is Mercury. So, this is going to be business and words and thoughts, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but I think this is more the some of the decisions she makes may not always be the best. Again, if she was basically trained with all these other people making decisions for her, you know, doing those things on her own might be problematic. Also, Moon and Venus are women, so an imagination, you know, feeling. So there are going to be gains through those sorts of things. Like probably, I don't know. I would imagine most of her audience is women, but I don't know. Um, but again, also Mercury's voice. So again, it's not her voice that's really outstanding. It's more the emotional stuff that she presents. But you know, whoever advised her to, you know, really push for being the songwriter was probably a smart move. So whoever advised her for that was, you know, really helped her out because again, she was rejected early on just for her voice. So okay, so now on to Travis's chart. See, there's a reason why I told you might want some snacks for this one. I had a feeling this was going to be long. I mean, one, it took me to places I wasn't really expecting to, but also like I'm actually snowed in because it's so cold where I live right now. I'm not going anywhere, so I guess that meant I was supported in indulging in Vedic astrology. So, so more for you guys to see and listen and experience yourselves, I guess. All right, so this is Travis's chart again without my notes and markings, so you can take a look. He was born October 5th, 1989. 5:49 a.m. And this is an exact birth time based on his birth chart. And he was born in Westlake, Ohio, USA. So let's see. All right. So uh, what's interesting already, I did mark a couple things here. So what's interesting is he has a conjunction of Sun and Mars, but look, it's like in direct contrast to Taylor's chart because she has Sun and Mars conjunct in the 12th house of losses and expenditures. He has Sun and Mars conjunct in the second house of gain. So he benefits. And again, he's a football player. So he's going to benefit from sort of these like manly men, you know? Um, and then he's got Mercury, and then he's got Mercury with it. So Mercury is about games, and Mars is about, you know, physical. So he's a leader of physical games like football. And so there you go. Also, he has a pop culture yoga. So even though things look pretty peachy keen for him, based on probably the public view, he's had some obstacles to overcome as well. Because he has a pop culture yoga. He's got malefics on either side of his lugna. So that's, again, similar to Taylor's chart. But he is a Leo rising or Simha Lugna here, fixed fire sign. So fixed actions, pretty predictable. And again, his Lugnatia's ruling planet Sun is with Mars. So he's going to be a pretty action-oriented guy who's, again, fixed in his action. Again, you could say predictable. You might say uh, potentially aggressive at times, or how do I say? This is going to be a lot of pitta if you do Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine. So when people have this much fire, they can be very goal-oriented, very sort of aggressive that way. When they're out of balance, they can become rigid, that kind of thing. So yeah, not yeah. But the other thing about Leo rising, peoples, they tend to draw people to them naturally, kind of like the sun, like kind of draws things to it. So, and also like a natural leader kind of king type, because sun represents king and president. That's right. And people just naturally sort of gravitate, to people like that, in that kind of dynamic of like leader and follower. So, his Lugna nakshatra is Uttra Falguni, which is symbolized by a marriage bed and hammock. But basically, what it symbolizes enjoyment with a purpose. So that's interesting, because that's going to be his gestalt for his whole life. I mean, he wants to enjoy himself. I mean, he pursued football instead of potentially counting, although some people really enjoy that. It's kind of like a more, but football, I mean, especially when you have a lot of money riding it, I'm sure there's pressure, but it's about having fun ultimately, right? That's what it's supposed to be about. That's why everybody's having, Super Bowl parties today and that sort of thing. So to celebrate that and have fun watching the game. But there's with a purpose with it. So even though he's enjoying himself, he's got his eyes on the prize, whatever the prize is. And again, that's in his life generally. So his ruling planet Sun has gone to the second house, which is an artisthana, which is a house that represents like building tangible wealth. Okay. And it's also the second house representing family, assets, and speech. So he's going to be very involved along those lines. Sun, and the thing is, he may not seem as aggressive externally as actually he is internally. Okay. Because I think most of the time when I see him, he's just like on the first picture I showed of him, like he's got a smile on and that sort of thing. Because his Mars is combust, so you can't see, when a planet's combust, you won't see the outer manifestations. So internally, though, he's going to be like a real force to be reckoned with. Okay. He's got a real drive. The other thing is that Sun and Mars, again, these two leadership planets, two fire planets, are both in a nakshatra called Hasta, which is symbolized by a hand. So he's going to be a fairly aggressive leader who handles things literally, takes control of things with his own hands, which is what he does on the field, in football. I mean, he handles the ball, but also in his life. Okay. And especially second house issues, family, speech, asset building, that sort of thing. And then Mercury is there in Uttra Falguni, which is this enjoyment with a purpose. Now, Mercury represents speech, and it's in the house of speech. So even though he's a football player, I was kind of surprised by this. I'm not really seeing football players so much. I mean, I think he is currently, but I think his real long-term goal and ambition is to be a sports broadcaster, sportscaster, I guess. Because with the Sun, Mars, Mercury, I mean, this is definitely like physical sports games, leadership, but also talking about it. Yeah, so, yeah. The other thing that's interesting about the second house is that is Mercury Swan in the second house. Okay, Mercury Swan in the second house means there's going to be big money here. Okay, and again, I was kind of surprised because it's obvious in his chart that he's got big money coming his way. Okay, because Mercury is the lord not only the second house of assets, but it's the lord of the 11th house of income. So he's two of his money charts, money houses are very strong. Okay, so there's a lot of dough coming his way. But again, I was seeing more sportscasters. So I think he's playing football since he can, as long as that lasts. But also, like, he has a podcast going, I guess, now. I think he's been on TV shows and stuff. So even though it looks like his career is football, I think he's known from the beginning, like there's a shelf life to that, expiration date on that. And so now he's sort of like training sort of informally for what I think he'll ultimately be really known for, which is sportscasting. And I think that was always in the picture for him. But he'll probably get more credibility being a professional player who turned into a sportscaster versus somebody who's been like a side, one of the armchair referee type. So he's got the kartari yoga here, which will bring some obstacles he has to break through. But he's also got a kahala yoga, which is a combination that indicates leader of leaders. So he's got trouble, but he's also a leader of leaders. So he's got positive and things going on. Definitely some major positive things going on, and then some things he's got to overcome here. Okay, so again, we're just looking at him as a person generally. And again, this will also make sense when you hear the story, if you're not familiar with the story of how he pursued Taylor fairly aggressively in their relationship. So it makes sense given this kind of chart. Okay. So let's see. So his birth dasha, he's born into Mercury. And let's see. Then he went through K2. Now he's currently in his Venus dasha. So this makes sense. Okay, so this I'm just like, okay, so it makes more sense for Travis why he's like interested in getting married. Because Mercury and K2, like, whereas like Taylor is going into Mercury K2, is in Mercury K2 subperiods and going into Mercury K2 Mahadasha's main planetary periods. He kind of started off in Mercury. He started off in Mercury K2. So he kind of started off as being more off to the side and not involved. And now he's going through Venus, his Venus period. So he's going to be all about socializing, the finer things of life, relationships, love, romance. That's all Venus stuff. So I was like, okay, this is like kind of more what I'm used to seeing. But he's currently running a subperiod of Saturn. Okay, now this I was like, oh, great, like another Saturn, showing up in their dasha period, planetary periods. I was like, it's not, usually ideal. So we got to look at those planets and what they're doing. Okay, but you can see in his chart, he's got Saturn in the fifth house of kids and romance. Okay, generally not an ideal situation when we're looking at romance and relationships, and kids and family building. And Saturn is aspecting his seventh house of relationships, personal relationships. It's also aspecting his 11th house of clubs, groups, society, income, and it's aspecting his second house of family. Okay, so the Saturn subperiod is not ideal, okay? But Venus makes sense, especially if you look at Venus is with Moon. It's like the supercharged feminine energy, okay? In the fourth house. In the fourth house, Venus and Moon both have digbala. They're both strong. Moon is debilitated, okay, because it's in Scorpio. But look opposite it. In the 10th house, you have Taurus. Venus is in its own sign, aspecting its own sign, and Moon is exalted. He's running Venus right now. His creative work is going to be like blitzkrieg off the charts. Okay, like work-wise, off the charts. Okay, now this may be a problem. Okay, because the Venus is pushing his career, but Saturn is cooling his relationship, family energy and house. Okay. There is some support for Saturn in the fifth house because Jupiter is aspecting its own sign from the 11th house. Okay. The thing that was that Jupiter being Swan its own house by aspect, and the fifth house by aspect, will protect the non-animate, inanimate things related to the fifth house, like creativity, but it will not protect living beings like children and romantic partners. Okay. So, and Jupiter represents speech. So, and Mars and Saturn represent engineering. So, this is engineered speech. This is like his podcast. So, his podcast is probably doing well. And his creative, Venus, this is like, I was like, wow. Even though he's known for sports or whatever, he's got really strong indications for some sort of public creative career, which he's transitioning into. See, the thing is, after Venus, he's running Sun. So, all of this podcasting business and TV business, this is all like training for when he shifts into Sun, which is when he turns, I think, 42. So that's around the corner. You know what I mean? Like that's what 5-ish years out or something for him, right? So that's around the corner. It's not too far off. But you can kind of see where the trajectory is for him, like with career. So the thing is, like, so Venus is going to be strong, Sun is going to be strong because it's with the SWA, Mercury, blah blah blah. Then after Sun, he's going to run Moon, so he's back to this creative, business, where Moon is going to be exalted in the 10th house. Do you see how this is completely different from the trajectory of Taylor's career? I mean, they're going, career-wise, right now she's like the superstar and probably a lot of people, and maybe it's actually, really, who knows, partly true, I don't know. But like, maybe he was riding on the, what do they call it? Riding on her, drafting off of her, energy and her fame and all this sort of thing. And, or what do they call it? Like riding on her tailcoat? Is that the phrase? I forget right now. Um, but again, it looks like for her, things are winding down. And for him, things are just getting started. I mean, he's got a whole new career coming up once he runs a sun period. And it's not going to slow. And so he's going to run Sun, Moon, and then he's back to Mars, and then back to, and then I guess in Rahu, if he gets to that point, things are going to be different. But basically, the rest of his life, his career is going to be pretty active, and that's by design as well, because he doesn't have those like, royalties from digital assets, music assets that Taylor has. So, yeah, but career-wise, he's going gangbusters right now. Yeah. So, but also Venus is in the 4th house of home, and it's with Moon. Moon is home. Venus, he's got 2 Digbala directional strength planets there. This is him nesting. That's what I see. He's nesting. He's in nesting mode. Um, yeah. I mean, he's all about relationships and romance and nesting. so, so I was like, yeah, it's not a surprise he's looking to get married. Um, yeah. So, yeah, but let's see. But the thing is, and there's protection, some protection on the 5th house, but he's got Saturn, this is also interesting. Saturn is in Purvashada and Jupiter's in Ardra. Exactly the same position and nakshatra as Taylor, just in different houses. I mean, that kind of blew my mind. And this is where I was like, oh, okay, I think I see where this is going now. So Saturn is going to put delays and obstacles on the 5th house matters, romance, children, and then you see Mars here coming from the 2nd house, and there's a mutual aspect between Saturn and Mars. So there's some Mars and Saturn together. It can bring engineering, and then Jupiter can bring speech. So this is his podcast. Okay, and the 5th house is also a stage. So this is his podcast, which is probably doing pretty well, or well enough, to again get that training in, so he can, become the big broadcaster on TV or whatever he wants to do. But he's got 2 malefic planets on the 5th house of kids. And Saturn is in Purvashada. So sorting through physical issues and hidden physical issues related to kids. And there might be some fighting going on here. Okay. The other thing is Saturn that's delaying 5th house matters is the lord of the 7th house. And Saturn is aspecting its own sign in the 7th house here. So Saturn's also going to put delays on partner, and this is going to be a very strong partner who's sorting things out. So this does kind of sound like Taylor. But Saturn, brings hardships, delays, obstacles, maturity. So this is going to be a mature partner. So again, they're both in their, I think, mid to late 30s at this point. So they're both mature. That also helps because they're also both mangalik. They have Mars in positions that can indicate trouble with relationships. But what's interesting is this Saturn in Purvashada, sorting through physical issues. Jupiter aspected by Jupiter, or mutually aspecting Jupiter, which is an Ardra energy again, sadness related to children. But for him, like the Ardra can also, because the storm clouds are related to electricity, this is also him speaking, with electrical machines, like his podcast. Okay, so that's working out. But so it works for his podcast, his electrical podcast, but it's not going to be great. it indicates essentially like a lot of sadness related to children, and maybe delays and obstacles and unseen physical issues, that are hard to work out and handle. And then again, Saturn and Purva is aspecting the seventh house of partner, and Jupiter and Ardra is aspecting the seventh house of partner as well. I mean, this is like the Saturn Jupiter combination in Taylor's chart, except it's only on partner's side. It's not on his side. So he's somebody who's going to take the bull by the horns and make things work. Whereas like Taylor's ways to sort and think and process and that sort of thing. Okay. So this also, because of this strong Saturn in in its own sign in the seventh house, can indicate a person who's going to be very fixed in their ways and ideas, who's constantly sorting through ideas and has a fixed way of doing that. But again, it's going to be a Saturnian type of energy that's only on the partner side. So it's not a Saturn that binds them together in terms of like commitment and longevity. It may be, again, physical obstacles, delays, distance with a partner who's that way, not necessarily him, because he's like Sun Mars guy. I mean, you know. Wow. So you can start to see like his relationship dynamics are quite different than hers. Yeah. And this is generally speaking, not just her, but relationships generally are, going to attract this sort of person. So let's see. So yeah, so Saturn and Jupiter on the 5th and 7th, sorting through disappointments, sadness, obstacles in relationships, romance, kids. So this is where I started thinking it's so odd. I mean, one, it was odd that she's running Saturn, Mercury, K2, and she's getting married. I mean, I was like, that's really strange. Now, this is odd that they both have Saturn and Purva Bhadrapada, or Purva Shada, with Jupiter and Saturn. Oh, sorry, Jupiter and Ardra, um, related to their seventh house of partnerships. I think what might be drawing these two people together. Okay, one is this looking to establish physical stability to have kids in the family. But it might also end up being, because of this Jupiter and Ardra, sadness related to trying to make that happen in a tangible way. And almost, I mean, it kind of made me sad, but that's kind of the energy. Because again, Jupiter does not represent Saturn as a planet, but it's an Ardra, so it will bring sadness. And Saturn is a planet that represents that. So it's almost like a double sadness, okay, related to, you sorting through structural issues in children, with children and that sort of thing. But what might tie them together is working through. I think it can go either way. It will either make them or break them. And I think that's what drew them together, was a sort of biological imperative to do this, especially with two high-level careers at their age. That's probably, at least for her, that seems like it's definitely on her mind, and usually for women it's, but uh, again, it might be a make it or break it type of thing, where they're going to be able to work through again, creating a stable foundation to have children or not. And again, you can see that coming through consistently through both her chart, his chart. And again, I'll go through his subcharts, and I'm also going to go through some dates for their relationship timeline. And the thing is, I always like a happy ending. I've told you guys this, many times before. The worst part about being an astrologer is being right about bad news. So I was actually looking, again, I'm always trying to be objective here and just report what I see, but I was sort of hoping, I was like, hopefully this chart will be happier and kind of, but we'll see over and over again that there's this kind of energy related to children. Okay, so that may end up being what ties them together, and also the sort of, they both individually have this karma. They have this like energy that they will each individually experience. And somehow, again, they both have, they're rich, famous, good-looking people. I mean, I'm sure they could have whoever, pretty much anybody they want. Of all the people they could have matched with, they have this in common more than anything else. I was like, wow, that's pretty neat, man. So yeah, if they can work through it, I think that's what's gonna tie them together. But it's we'll see. So anyway, let's keep going. We'll keep going, but you'll see this over and over again. So again, delays, hidden physical issues. And then remember for Taylor, her fifth lord is a Swam Mars that's gone to the 12th house. So she also has indications that there's trouble with children. Yeah. Because her fifth lord has gone to the 12th house of loss and expenditures. Um, so there is a decent bond between them. But the other thing, and we'll talk about when we get to the specifically Synastry chart, slide or whatever, there's a friendly type of supportive energy between them, but it doesn't seem like I was also surprised by that. I'll talk about it more. There's not like a really super strong bond that I typically see with relationships, people getting married. But this problematic issue with children is almost exactly the same, and that's what caught my eye and attention. Okay. Um, But so with him, he's also actively involved directly with a lot of people because his sun is conjunct with Mars and Mercury. Mars represents siblings, and Mercury represents friends. And Mercury is the lord of his 11th house of older siblings. He has a brother who's also a football player, or was. I don't know if he still is. I don't know if he's older or younger. I'm guessing it was an older brother because Jupiter represents older siblings, and it's in the 11th house of older siblings. So, which might also mean he has trouble with older siblings. Actually, it's a karako bhava nasha, potentially for older sibling. But let's see. But Mars is also lord of his fourth house of mom and his ninth lord of dad. So he's very actively involved directly in relating directly with his family and friends who are like family. Yeah. But what's interesting is not in that mix is Venus. So I think until Venus, right, the partner becomes officially part of the family, he might kind of hold him at arm's length. The partner is at arm's length. And it seems like, again, like it might also mean, based on his chart, it's hard for the partners to become part of the family because they're like a tight knit group. And again, I don't know, but even the few pictures that sort of come my way that I'm not looking for, it's like Travis and his mom and Taylor are all hanging out for Thanksgiving. So at least it seems like that's happening, but based on this, I don't know how deep that really goes until it's officially they're officially a married couple. That's what I'm saying here. Um, and again, not just for Taylor, but any partner he has, until they're an official part of the family, I think there's going to be some distance there. Yeah. Yeah. So that's his general relationship type. And more about his relationships. So let's see, actively engage with family, partners, groups, friends, less partner with partners. The other thing is that the relative position of these planets seems like there might not be explicit support. Like there is support for partners, but it might not be explicit, especially depending on what they want and need. Like if they need verbal, validation or confirmation, that may not be there, even though support's there. So that might be a challenge. The other thing is that the relative position of the first lord and seventh lord indicates that there can be a challenge related to balancing public and private life. Now, that's also part of why I spent all that time looking at where is Taylor's career going versus his, because if she's been sort of the big kahuna and now she's kind of winding down and he's having fun and basically training for his second career, which is going to consume him for a long time, their careers are heading in opposite directions. And so she might be wanting to slow down, which again, I mentioned, whereas he's just sort of starting to, he's going to be pretty active. So he may not be home a lot if he's that active as with his career. And it can also indicate tension in terms of who's getting attention versus from their public life versus their private life. Um, yeah. So I talked about Moon and Venus. So the partner, because there's Moon and Jesta, so this is a protective Moon energy, and Venus is Vishaka. So this is like, because in her chart she had no. So in her chart she had Sun in Jesta and Mars in Vishaka, and he has Moon in Jesta. So he has the female version of like this high level, protective, successful person. um, so they're going to be creative, emotionally protective, might overdrive the self, maybe some issues with parents as well. Um, and there might be some distance here. But the thing is that what I was saying here with the Moon and Venus, this is like his part. He's basically looking for the mother of his children in his partner. Um, because again, he's not so as active as he is. I mean, he's Sun Mars conjunct person. That energy is going towards family, but not so much partners. Until they become a part of the family. So, but I think his real drive, because Jupiter is aspecting in his natal chart, Jupiter is aspecting its own sign in the fifth house of children. And currently, Jupiter is in this position, aspecting from Gemini to Sagittarius. So right now, the current sky pattern is, lighting up this Jupiter in its own sign. So he's really interested in having kids and a family. So whoever he's looking for is, again, mother of his children, baby mama, whatever you want to say. That's really what he's looking for. There will be some emotional issues here with the partner because the moon is dark and it's also debilitated, and it's also karka bhava nasha. So there might again also be issues with mom, um, and kind of the emotional part of the partners that he has. But also, I would say his home and happiness based on probably how his partners are doing or not doing, And then again, there's going to be this huge creative drive towards work I mentioned because there's going to be a suave Venus and exalted moon in this 10th house. So again, even though he's running Venus, it's more actively pushing his career than his relationships. It's also kind of funny. Okay, so now here's the actual kind of more synastry, like, between Taylor and Travis. So here's their chart side by side. Um, so, we start looking at the relative positions of the Lugna, Sun, Moon, and Venus, those four, what we call cornerstones. And again, their general relationship dynamics and skills. So they're both fire signs. So that's nice. They're not the same fire sign, but they're both fire signs. So that's support. That indicates support of each other, in kind of like a pretty active way. So that's nice. Then let's see. And again, what's really weird is both of their seventh houses has Saturn and Purvashada with Jupiter and Ardra. So sorting through sadness, stability, and creating stability, and having a mature partner to create stability to have kids. That's again what I thought was the weirdest thing of this whole analysis. And then the relative positions of the sun, they're friendly. Towards each other's super active, competitive, high level careers. So that's nice. I think Moon is a sticking point. Moon is not super in a great position from each other. So I think they might have difficulty getting into emotional sync with each other. Venus is supportive and affectionate, but I think more friendly than passionate for what I'm seeing for them. Taylor is much more kind of has direct interactions with their partners and might bring this sort of like intensity, but also tension, because again, she's this active, like openly communicating, processing, details and stories, and not only for her life and her songwriting, but with her partners, which may not everybody may not be up for. They just kind of want to do it. They just want to be in the relationship. They don't want to talk about it all the time and like process all the time. Travis again, there might have issues with arguments and competition because he's so fiery, and also again the relative position of his first and seventh lord. And again, there might be problems related to him being in the public spotlight and overshadowing his partner and spending enough time at home. Um, so the moon is problematic, which is the emotional life. The other ones are, not bad. They're on the plus side. But again, none of these are super strong in terms of the synastry between these two charts. And like nothing, the strongest thing that, binds these two charts together is again this like Saturn and Purvashada and Jupiter and Ardra in the seventh house, which is a weird thing. So it's almost like because there's like sadness and delays and obstacles and chronic problems, it's almost like trauma bonding. And I was like, I mean, trench mates, like, and again, sometimes that works, but it can't, I don't know. I guess I've had relationships in my life, even just friendships or whatever. And some of my friends, like, I thought, wow, these are really super good friends. They're like the opposite of fair weather friends, like the friends who are only there in good times. These are the friends who are like, they're in there in the trenches with you in the bad times. But then it was almost like the opposite. Like once your life starts going good, they get upset because you're not like, they don't need to be your counselor anymore, get you up off the couch, get you moving back into life again. So, um, so I don't know. I don't know if this is the healthiest or even most sustainable dynamic, if that's what binds these two together, is that they're both individually supposed to experience some sort of trouble with having kids. And again, their charts match on that level, which is sort of weird. But so yeah. So this also, because I don't see other super strong bonds here, um, again, maybe supportive and friendly, but I don't know, will it survive big trials in life? I don't know. So it's a question for sure. Okay, so let's look at Travis's subcharts now. So again, just to remind you of his dasha period, and that's what we're looking for in these subcharts. So I circled the ones that are, he's been running or is actively running or heading into. So what I circled here, okay, so the time that they met was July 2023. He was at that time running Venus Jupiter, okay, which is like ideal. I mean, Venus Jupiter, those are two great benefics. It's like love to be in love. So circled Venus Jupiter, and his current dasha is Venus Saturn. So again, there's gonna be some practical issues and delays just knowing what those planets are about, but still romance and partnership. And the Venus Saturn is turning into, over the next few years or so, turning into Venus Mercury K2, because it goes Saturn Mercury K2. So I circled those planets to see how this Venus dasha is shifting over the next few years, because again, I was thinking they're probably going to get married in the next few years. That's what most people do or think about. Then I circled Sun because he's switching into his Sun Mahadasha, or main planetary period, in June of 2031 when he turns 42. So he's still going to be running Venus, right, the planet of love and romance, for, what is it, about another 6 years or so. So let's see what that looks like for his Navamsha D9 for spouse and partnership. So first off, even though he ran planets Venus and Jupiter, which we you know, usually think of as like great planets to get married in, and I even said it. And his D9, Venus and Jupiter, are not well placed. And that's when they came together. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in his main chart, again, it's not all doom and gloom. And again, maybe the D9 is not work for him. In his main chart, though, again, Jupiter was signaling more children, because Jupiter represents children, and it was aspecting the fifth house of children. So again, I was seeing here more like a Venus, the Venus moon in his fourth house. If he's looking for a mother for his children, okay, when they met, and he was just in that mode. The biological imperative to do so. Okay. The other thing is Jupiter and Venus are in 3 and 8, houses 3 and 8 here, which signals changes and endings. Venus also is challenged because it's in a Papsankhya yoga with Mars, which is in the sixth house of acute issues. Okay, so there's going to be challenges in addition to not being well placed. Venus is going to create some challenges here. Okay, um, and then what do we have here? Okay, so this is also again you can't make this stuff up. So Jupiter's in the third house, which is not a positive house, and that may in of itself may not be a bad thing. But look at this; it's being aspected by Saturn, where Saturn is Swa. So he's basically there's going to be this massive Saturnian influence on Jupiter. So problems, obstacles, delays, kids. And look at the fifth house lord is Mars and it's gone to a negative house. Do you see what I'm seeing here? I mean, again, I kept looking. Part of the reason why I kept looking at charts was I was like, isn't there something different? But it kind of kept coming up the same thing. Yeah. So, the Mercury period will bring wealth. I mean, it's in the second house and it's aspected by uh, um, natural benefic planet Venus. So, you know, the other thing is seventh lord or indicating partners going to second house. It will bring him when he gets in a partnership that should bring him wealth. And again, if he marries Taylor Swift, that's true. We all know that that's true, right? So, but Jupiter will bring challenges with kids. Yeah. And then Saturn, Mercury, K2 are okay. I mean, they're not bad here. I mean, they're not benefic planets, but they're not horrible and they're positively placed. But again, Saturn, Mercury, and K2 signal distance and separation, obstacles. And then Sun is on the 1-7 axis. So actually, the Sun period potentially is better time for him to be in relationships. So I don't know if they're willing to wait. um, but they already got engaged, during Venus something. I don't know when they got engaged. I didn't write that down, but Venus something for him. So, maybe if they get married, if they wait that long, 6 years to get married. But at least the time they met and currently it's not stellar, let's put it that way. Um, And then Sun, especially with Sun being on the 1-7 axis, I mean, that's going to be, Sun represents the soul. That's going to be more of a soul connection. And also the Sun is in his natal chart is in the second house. I mean, that's family, but I would wonder with Sun what that means for his career, because Sun also represents career. And again, that plays into that, what I was seeing in his chart of there can be problems related to him spending so much time in a public career and not enough time at home. And also like him overshadowing his partner potentially. So, yeah, a little bit of mixed energy here for him related to Venus and Jupiter as a time to meet somebody and get into a serious commitment with them. But what I am seeing that's consistent is him looking for somebody to partner with him to have kids. So let's see here on this slide, we have the D10 for career and reputation, the D11 for public support and income, and the D4 for assets. So just to remind you, his dasha sequence is K2 from age 15 to 22, Venus from age 22 to 42, and then he'll get into the Sun period from age 44 to 48. So I gotta check on that. I think that's 49. Oh, sorry, 42 to 48. I need to change the age. It was like Sun period's more than 4. It's like 6 years, not 4 years. Anyway, now remember in his main chart, K2 was in his 12th house, so he was kind of like off the grid. I think that's when he was doing his collegiate football stuff. So maybe on campus he was a big man, but he wasn't making money, and he wasn't like nationally famous. But let's see what his chart shows. So in the Dashamsha D10, so I just circled K2, Venus, and Sun to make it a little simpler for him. So K2 is in a negative house, and Venus is also in a negative house. So that's also interesting. You wouldn't expect that since his career, as a football player, is going pretty well. I mean, he's a professional football player. But what's interesting is Venus is with a Swan moon. So there can be changes and endings related to his career reputation when you during the Venus period. And as I mentioned, it looks like in his main chart that he's actually looking, for the long play here in terms of what he really wants to do is be a sportscaster. So his D10 is not showing football player. It's actually showing also sportscaster. Because look at his lugna. He's got Mercury, he's got Sun aspecting, and Jupiter aspecting, and Mars aspecting. So he's actually in his lugna, he's got Mercury, Mars, and Sun, like his second house in his natal chart. So again, sports, leader of sports. And then he's got Jupiter and Mercury there doing a lot of conversation, news, media related to sports, being a leader in sports broadcasting. So, again, his um so I think in the end of, the end of his days, he's going to end up being more known for his sports broadcasting than his career as a football player. But there's still important things to happen because of the football career. So just wait for that. Okay. So, but then the Ekadamsha D11 for public support and income. Now, this is important for public support, income, but also awards and that sort of thing. So all the grahas are well placed. There's a parivartana between K2 and Mercury. So K2 and Mercury link the 1st and 11th house. So himself and clubs, group, society. So he's going to be a popular guy here. And Mercury's technology, K2's technology. So he's technology and Mercury's communicating. So he's going to be a popular technology communicator, which again, broadcasting, TV, sports broadcast. This looks like that's what's going on for him. And then he's got Sun in the 11th house also. Sun is aspect in there, which is exalted. So his 11th house, he has an exalted Sun, exalted K2, or Swa K2, and the 11th house. This is technology, stage groups, money, popularity, awards. And again, he started with K2. He was born into K2, setting this whole thing off as D11. So his K2 is very strong. Venus is strong in his 5th house because Venus aspects its own sign in the 5th house, which is stage and creativity. So Venus and Moon are together again. So you can see in, I think, almost all his charts, it's like Venus and Moon, this combination is really strong. That's also important because that not only is important because of his partner, his personal love partner, but this also means like women dig him. He's a pretty good looking guy. So, and the 2nd house represents like the face and the voice. So ultimately, and even though like the Sun is there and the Sun represents the whole physicality, and that may be true, I think ultimately he's going to be known as a sportscaster. He's going to be known for his face and the voice. And again, because the Sun is with Mars, he's going to be a man's man, but he's also going to attract the ladies. Let's put it that way. Okay. So this D11's like on fire for this guy. So a lot of public support, a lot of income here, popularity, awards, all this going on. And again, this is all related to the 1st house of self, 5th house of creativity and stage, and 11th house of groups. You can see it all is like all the arrows are bringing these all together. Then the D4 for assets. So again, this is like, pretty big assets in life, like even a portfolio and stuff like that. K2's not well placed, but it's SWA. So again, this is when he was up until the end of college. So again, didn't have a lot going on there. But then look at Venus. His Venus, like Venus aspects, kind of like in his natal chart. Venus is aspecting Taurus, its own sign in the Lugna, and he's got an exalted moon here. That's crazy. So while he's running Venus, he's going to be banking money. They're rolling dough. So even though he may not be known at the end of his life for being this like massively wonderful football player, he is making bankroll on his time in the NFL. And he will be more known for, I think, the sportscasting once he shifts to that, But yeah, creativity looks, and that's the thing is that Moon and Venus are also aesthetics, and the 1st house is self, Moon is face. This is being attractive to women. um, and the other thing is that, again, once he especially got involved with, Taylor Swift, I bet he all of a sudden became on the radar of all of her fans, which, I think are predominantly women. So he gained all that support as well. Yeah, so yeah, he's rolling in it right now, rolling in dough right now. So and then Sun, when he goes to Sun, again, it's gonna cool down for him. Like Sun is with its soul enemy, Saturn, and he's got two natural malefics. Um it's kind of good. His dispositor for his landlord for Sun is Swa Jupiter. That helps, but Jupiter's in a, eighth house, negative house. So he's not, once he shifts into the Saturn Sun period, he's not going to be rolling dough the same way. But during this Venus period, man, he's like stacking cash. So, you know, as long as he manages that well, it's probably set him up for life. But again, what's interesting from the Venus, since one of the planets I circled was Venus, is always like mutually aspecting Moon here. So part of the benefit of this Venus period for him is about aesthetics, creativity, and women. So the other thing is, I think part of that is like, him being, exposed to more of the feminine mindset. There you go. I was like, there's something here. Him being exposed to more of the feminine mindset by being a partner of Taylor, both through his daily relationship, interactions with her, but then also through her fans and her thinking as somebody who's been like bankrolling off the feminine perspective of processing disappointments in relationships. I bet that's a huge educational point for him. I mean, we haven't Jupiter, Mercury strong. Yeah, so I think he's learning a lot here. Yeah. From, again, personally and sort of professionally being around not just Taylor, but, the women he's been involved with, his partners he's been involved with for 20 years or so. So, yeah. Okay, so now I was going to go through a few key dates for their relationship, which, again, I was thinking, depending on specific days, that might be giving us different energies. Again, I was still rooting for them, I mean, I'm being objective here. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat what I see, but I was like hoping. I was like, oh, I'm always like, yeah, was there a happy ending? Um, so let's look at these dates and then you decide. But I think it'll be pretty obvious. So this chart is for the key date of Travis attends Taylor's concert. So this is July 8th, 2023. She came on stage at 8 o'clock in the evening, and this was in Kansas City, Missouri, United States. Okay, so what he did, he tried. This is kind of funny, which is a very Sun conjunct Leo, Sun conjunct Mars type of way, and with a Leo rising, is that he went to her concert and tried to talk to her and give her his number. But she apparently doesn't talk to anybody before after concerts to save her voice. So he shot his shot, but he got shot down essentially, which is what this chart shows. So the Lugna nakshatra is Mula. Mula is a nakshatra that's like the deity of that is the goddess of death and destruction. So that immediately I was like, probably didn't work. And then aspected in the Lugna is Rahu, which is ambition, in the nakshatra Ashwini, which is about pioneering. So this was like an ambitious first action to save and recover and be a hero here. And then he's got this chart has Jupiter aspecting from the fifth house, and Jupiter's in Bharani, which is symbolized by a womb. So this is like children being birthed. Okay. Aspecting the Lugna. So again, this is him with his biological imperative to have kids. And Rahu in this chart, is ambition, drive, can be obsession, compulsion, is with Jupiter. This is in the fifth house of children. This is literally being baby crazy. I mean, as far as like parts go. So he's got this going on. In this moment has it going on. Yeah, but the thing is that there are problems here. Because Rahu is in Ashwini. Ashwini can indicate medical problems. So difficult, unusual medical problems. And Saturn is Swa retro. There's massive Saturn in the third house is aspecting the fifth house where it's debilitated. So there's also these massive, and it's Saturn's in Shata Bisha, which is 100 healing, massive structural obstacles, physical obstacles, delays related to having kids. I mean, destructive even. And then Jupiter, you think, well, Jupiter's there, that's natural benefic, it's in Barney, that's like gonna help. But and it does, I mean better than not, but Jupiter is karako bhava nasha. Jupiter in the fifth house actually indicates problems with children. So this is even more this date and when they almost met. Maybe it was good he got shot down because this is not an ideal time to find the mother of your children based on this chart. Yeah. So anyway, and then the Saturn, massive Saturn, is also aspecting Mars and Venus together. Mars and Venus are like, that's romance right there. And Mars and Venus are in a nakshatra called Maga, which is like a throne. So this is like a high level, and this is in Leo, which is a high level romance here. So suppressed by this massive Saturn. So no babies, no lover, no fun, no romance. That's going on in this one. So he got sidelined. Yeah, for sure. The other thing is the seventh lord has gone to the eighth house of deep, dark problems. Um, so that's not good for the relationship at this moment, of any relationship developed at this moment. And then what else do we have? Jupiter's aspecting Libra. Oh, that's also important because Jupiter's aspecting Libra where Ketu is, and Libra is her, right? Oh, wait. Because she's in, hold on. Do I have it backwards? I have it backwards. No. Oh, no, there you go. Jupiter. No, this is exactly the same. So she's a Sagittarius rising. So Rahu and Jupiter is in her fifth. This is her fifth house, literally her fifth house, um, of babies and being baby crazy. So again, she's going to have some biological narrative. Yeah, I have to fix that, but let me just check. Let me see, fifth house. Oh, so that's the thing. So Rahu and Jupiter. Okay. Rahu and Jupiter are in the fifth house here, which is Sagittarius rising, which is the same rising sign as Taylor. So there's just generally for all Sagittarius risings, there was this kind of wave of baby craziness that happened for about a year, okay, when Rahu and Jupiter were in Aries. Okay. But there was delays because of this massive Saturn sitting on top of and creating all these obstacles for Rahu and Jupiter. And this was at the end of the pandemic, right? Yeah. So, but the thing is, Rahu and Jupiter, these baby crazy energy planets are aspecting Sagittarius, which is the fifth house for a Leo. If you go to the ninth house here, which is Leo, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Sagittarius is going to be the fifth house for Leo risings, including Travis. So both of them at the time of this concert had this baby crazy, kind of energy in their fifth house of children. So again, I was just like, I think that's what drew them together. Yeah. So that's pretty wild. So again, it didn't work out, and maybe it was a good thing things didn't work out because this is not a great chart to get involved with somebody on. But it is what it is. All right. So here's another key date in the relationship timeline. So a few weeks after the July 8th concert, so this is July 26, 2023, 8 o'clock in the morning in Leawood, Missouri. His podcast, he released a podcast. Leawood is where he records them. That's why I chose this place. But you kind of get the energy here. So what he did in this podcast was he tells the audience about the concert failure he had from 8th of July. So what is it, like 3 weeks back? Almost 3 weeks back. And he has Taylor on the program. So basically, he's confessing his love to her for the world. Okay, I guess she was going. I was like, this is such a like Leo rising, Sun and Mars conjunct type of thing to do. So it's pretty funny. He's not going to stop. He's not going to back down. Fixed in his ways. That's kind of cute, Anyway. But anyway, so the dasha period here for this chart is Rahu, Venus, Jupiter. Okay, so we know Rahu is ambition, Venus is romance partner, and Jupiter is kids. So ambition. And then where are these things? So Rahu and Jupiter. So this, again, we've got the baby crazy energy in the 10th house of work. and Jupiter is speech, and Rahu is technology. So, his work is talking about his baby craziness, essentially, and his podcast, right? So he's got all that going on. But so Rahu and Jupiter are there. Also, Rahu and Jupiter are aspecting Venus in the second house of speech and family. So he's basically also announcing, his drive to create a family here, Um, yeah, I was like, wow, okay, I mean, that's the guy. Well, I mean, he must know that she has some interest if he showed up on his show. I mean, he probably made sure that he didn't get like rejected in public. But I mean, she said yes pretty fast. If this was only about 3 weeks, 2 week, whatever, 2 weeks out for them to get together here. So yeah. But we've got this Swa retrograde Saturn in Shatabisha, aspecting Jupiter and Rahu, so it's kind of suppressing this public display of baby craziness. And it's aspecting the second house of family. And again, this massive Saturn, it's not sitting in the fifth house, but it's aspecting the fifth house of kids. So you've got this massive Saturn both on the fifth house lord of Mars, and the karaka, bhava karaka, the planet symbolizing the fifth house of Jupiter. I mean, there's no babies coming. There might be a drive to have babies, but there's no babies coming out of this chart. Okay. Or if they are, there's gonna be a lot of problems. Okay. So, this might seem very funny and entertaining based on it, because it's like an unusual story being told here about love and romance, and kind of, especially at a high level, I mean, I'm sure people this probably really set off his podcast. This is probably the one, I don't know, I would guess that this is the podcast that really blew up his, following or whatever. But so even though it might have been a really entertaining and productive podcast, this is not a productive chart for family, making babies and families, and also relationships, because again, this massive Saturn is also the lord of the seventh house of partners. So yeah, and what do we have at the top here? Well, this is the fourth house of, not the fourth house, but the fourth constellation. So we have Moon at the top. That's home, family, emotions, and Sun is in. That should be, I believe his Sun is in Pusha here. So this effort here, this emotional display, and again, the ascendant here is in the Shlesha, which is drawing attention. This is drawing attention and supporting his career of doing this podcast. So even if like things didn't work out like a month later, it was still going to like support his podcast. And again, second career coming. Okay. But again, as you see, same kind of energy related to fifth house. Fifth house matters, especially kids. So that's consistent. All right, we got another date here. This is the last one. So this is their engagement announcement. So they announced their engagement 26th of August, 2025. This happened. Taylor posted on her Instagram account. I don't know that she did, but I'm sure her management team did, because I couldn't find a date. I was trying to track her down on this day to see where she was. Apparently she and Travis were off vacationing in Florida and other places. So I assume this was her management team, and her management team is located in Nashville, Tennessee. So I posted that place in this chart. They apparently got engaged in Leawood, Kansas, or Leawood, Missouri, or wherever he's from, which is also in the central time zone of the United States. So I don't think the place, whether it was Kansas or Missouri or Tennessee, I don't think that matters too much. And also, based on this chart, I think it was her management team that posted, not her personally. So the Lugna Nakshatra is Anurata, which sounds pretty good. Anurata is all about us building a successful alliance and partnership. So that's great for the post, as well as, Taylor and Travis. That sounds pretty good. The dasha period also makes sense because Moon, the dasha period is Moon and Venus. So Moon and Venus, emotional planets, Moon public, Venus love. So this is like a feel good, love type of post. Okay. And also, they posted a pretty picture. So, also about aesthetics. So, it was all done in a very nice, lovely, attractive way, very emotional. There is a parivartana, exchange of houses between Moon and Mercury. So, again, Moon is in Hasta, so handling the public. Mercury's in Shlesha, words or announcements, an alert or attention grabbing words. So I'm sure it caught the public's attention here. And you can see Mercury is in the ninth house of authority and enterprise. So again, I think this is our management team. And Moon is in the 11th house of clubs, groups, and societies. So again, this is about, and Venus is also in the ninth house. So you can see that there's this tight relationship between ninth house, I assume her management team, sending out an announcement to the public about this engagement. Yeah. So, so what's interesting is, a couple of years have passed by. So, and a couple of years gives Saturn a chance to move out of, what was it? Aquarius, where it was Swa. So it's like, okay, good. We're moving on from Aquarius. Let's get some new energy here. But look at where Saturn is again. Saturn is in the fifth house of romance and kids, and Saturn is aspecting the seventh house of relationships, and it's aspecting the second house of family. The other thing is Saturn in a better nakshatra. Saturn is still retrograde here, so Saturn is strong. It's in a neutral sign, so there's nothing really preventing Saturn from, being not strong. Saturn's in a different nakshatra. Instead of being in Shatbisha, 100 healers, it's in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is the back legs of a funeral pyre. So, does that sound like a positive nakshatra for relationships, family, kids? No, not really. So, this is basically the same energy, even though 2 years later, Saturn has moved on from this gnarly position it was in Aquarius. And the other thing is the Lord of the fifth house is Jupiter, and Jupiter has gone to the eighth house. Now, Jupiter doubles up here because Jupiter is not only the Lord of the fifth house, but it's a bhava karaka, it's a graha karaka, or bhava karaka, it's not only the Lord of the house, but it's the planet representing the house. So, and on both fronts, that means Jupiter is even more important for determining the outcomes of fifth house matters related to children. And it's in the eighth house of long, deep, chronic problems. And I think it's in Punarvasi, so there's a cycling energy. So there's like constant problems, long-term problems, potentially with kids here. So I was like, oh man, it's like, you can't catch a break, man. I was like, come on, show me something better. And it wasn't really coming. So yeah, and the other thing is, again, I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but I think it's going to be challenging. So we'll talk more about that. Let me just finish up here, and then I've got a little bit more. So, um, yeah. Anyway, let's see. So Saturn switched to Pisces, still retrograde, but it's on these houses that are not helpful for kids, family, partner. And then the fifth house lord I talked about. And then also K2 is aspect in the second house. So you have Saturn and K2 on the second house of family, that's separation. Jupiter's aspecting there. So what that means, again, Jupiter aspecting its own sign will protect inanimate things. This is the second house. So assets and speech, that's going to go. But it's not going to protect people related to the second house, which is inner circle and family. So that's not great. The other thing is, look at what we got here. Look at how close K2 and Sun are together. I mean, does that remind you of anything since I mentioned eclipses are coming? So K2 is retrograding here. Sun is moving forward. So in about 10 days from this time, there is going to be a lunar eclipse. So in addition to the problems that Saturn brings to this chart, there's also a lunar eclipse, unexpected energy here. Okay. And then eclipse will happen September 7th, 2025. The other thing is this 10th house. So there's a Swa sun in Maga. So Maga is that nakshatra symbolized by a throne, and Ketu's there. Ketu again is a separationist energy, and it's in Purva Falguni. Purva Falguni is symbolized by a wedding, marriage bed or a hammock. So there can be unexpected, separations related to high level leadership, boss, wedding, marriage. Despite there's clearly some, benefit and victory here and emotional statements and stuff like that. And, getting the word out and everybody going, yay, Taylor and Travis, they're together, la la. Um, and again, we're running the dasha, Moon and Venus, but for this chart, when we get around to running Sun, let's see, Moon, Mars. So, well, Mars is going to come, and then Rahu is going to come. Wait, Venus. Hold on. Let's go with the Bhukti. But because Moon, after the Moon Mahadasha is going to be Mars, and Mars is going to activate the Saturn because Mars and Saturn are they're what do I say, mutually aspecting each other. The other thing is Saturn is in its own star, so actually Saturn is Swa by its own star. So it's even in a stronger Saturn here. I mean, that's pretty wild, yeah. So, let's see, Mars, Shlesha. Mars might be in Hasta as well. Yeah, so it's all about handling the public. But again, once you start running bhuktis after Venus, and once Moon moves to Mars, and Moon is a relatively short dasha, 10 years, so Venus is probably halfway. So yeah, there might be like that might be part of the picture here, is that once you move away from this specific announcement and this was a successful announcement, but in terms of what's happening on the ground floor and people and real people, the real reality of people's lives, in terms of building a happy long-term family. I'm seeing a lot of delays and obstacles. Yeah. So yeah, so this one didn't help me. See a different picture, unfortunately. Okay, so then last of what I looked at here is I looked at the D7 charts for Travis and Taylor. So the D7, so I looked at the D9, which is spouse and partnerships, and D10 for career, reputation, D11 for public support and income, and then the D4 for assets. So this, because again, everything kept going back to problem with kids, I was like, well, let's see, maybe if the D7s are like stellar, that'll help, because sometimes when you have a amazingly stellar D7, that will mitigate what's happening in the D1, the main natal chart. So I was like, well, maybe. So maybe I'm way off base, and I hope to be way off base. But let's see. So the D7 chart here for Travis. So again, the engagement in current dasha he's running is Venus, Saturn. So I circled those planets. And then his next Mahadasha is Sun, so I circled that as well, which he'll begin at age 42. So you can see Venus is amazing for him. So especially for having kids. I mean, it may not be great for a relationship, but it's amazing for having kids, because look, his Venus has Digbala, it's Swan in the 4th house. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, there is a drawback, because Saturn, this Bhukti subperiod here, is aspecting Venus, and Saturn's in the 2nd house of home and family. Or not. Well, 2nd house is family, 4th house is home. So Saturn is going to bring delays and obstacles, and maybe worries as well, because the 4th house is happiness, and the 8th house is also aspected by Saturn, is deep psychology. So there might be worries about family and home here. And then you can see Saturn is aspecting Venus, the partner, and it's aspecting Moon, mind, and it's on Mercury, the other mind planet, and it's also aspecting Jupiter, children. Okay. And Mercury's the lord of the 5th house. There's a malefic in the 5th house, Mars. There is a parivartana between Mercury and Jupiter, so that'll make Jupiter stronger and Mercury stronger, so that'll improve the bhava karaka for the fifth house of children and also the lord of the fifth house. So for Travis, what I'm seeing in his Venus period, which he's running until the age of 42, I think his D7 is showing that he can work through the issues with the kids. Okay. And when he starts running Sun is in a, you can see Sun is in a negative house with a natural malefic there. Actually, once he starts the Sun period, it's going to be less optimal for him. Even though there might be worries and concerns and physical, delays or whatever, still the Venus period is much better so there's strength in the Venus period, but there's going to be like an emotional roller coaster. Because again, this Mercury, Saturn, Moon, Jupiter is like, the 1-7 axis for Taylor's main chart, right? Processing through emotions and all this sort of going back and forth stuff. Yeah. The other thing is the Sun period, look, is the lord of his seventh house here, the partnership. Yeah. So it's going to a negative house. So, yeah. So for Travis, I'm not sure that what I've been seeing, again, it's been a lot because it's been basically every chart, but I think he has the possibility of working through this stuff, but let's look at Taylor's chart here. All right, so now Taylor's chart. So again, just to remind you, the engagement just shot for Saturn K2, so I circled those planets. Again, those on their own are going to signal issues, family, home, and happiness. Look, she's got Saturn in the second house too, of family, and it's aspecting her fourth house of home and happiness. Look at her Saturn. It's not supported by an aspect in parivartana of Jupiter here. It's debilitated. I mean, that's like hardcore, man. You know what I mean? And it's aspecting the fourth house. It's also aspecting her eighth house here. So this is really going to, I think, take a toll on her mentally and emotionally, her happiness and her psychology and stuff like that. So not ideal. The Saturn period is not ideal for her. And again, she's running Saturn until the age of 49. So again, their timing with kids is going to be off because he's going to get worse. It's going to be worse for him after age of 42, and it's going to get better for her after the age of 49. And I'm guessing she doesn't want, because that's going to be 13 years. I mean, I'm guessing she doesn't want to wait that long. But that's the other thing too. I was thinking with her, if she was just on her own or with a flexible partner, she might wait that long, maybe involve with surrogates, maybe adopt or find alternative paths rather than a biological way to have kids. Yeah, I don't think it's completely out of the question for her. I just think the timing for them having kids doesn't seem to line up here. And again, if both of them were in this baby crazy energy at the time they met and got involved, and that was the main motivation for them getting together like that, then if they're friendly and supportive enough and creative and flexible enough, I think they both have the potential. It's just they may have to, really work out the timing here. So, yeah, and then so again, not all doom and gloom, but I think what this might mean is if they try, they may have a lot of problems. And if they find an optimal window that's, suitable for both of them simultaneously, it could happen, if the other alternative methods for having kids, is there as well. I think is a potential option if they're open to it. So, so K2, also I didn't mention that K2 is in the fifth house of counseling. So again, this might be like getting some alternative counseling related to kids. But I think there are problems here because the lord of the fifth house is gone to the sixth house, the negative house. So this could be separation from kids or, problems having kids, or again, alternative advice related to having kids if there's a fertility issue or something like that. Then the current dasha is Saturn Venus. Well, is Venus better or worse than K2? Well, Venus is in the sixth house, it's in a negative house. So actually Venus is worse off than K2 in a way. it's a natural benefic, but it's not in a positive house, and it's got Mars on it. So that's, Venus is not stellar, and she'll be running Saturn Venus until the age of 40. So, because these are long dasha, so, again, not optimal here. Then the next Mahadasha, Mercury, she starts running at the age of 49, which is a long way off for her. Mercury would potentially be better if she's willing to wait that long, because Mercury and Jupiter are in parivartana with each other. So Mercury and Jupiter will be very strong. But, I don't know that she wants to wait that long. The other thing is, before she converts to the Mercury Mahadasha, she'll be running a sub-period of Saturn Jupiter. And Jupiter is going to be much stronger for her, because with this parivartana, it's kind of like her main chart, where she's got Jupiter all over the chart in her main chart. So the very end of Saturn, beginning of Mercury period, it's going to be about, I think, a couple years before she turns. Oh, that's still pretty late. So that might be like age 45 to 49, like late 40s. That, for her, again, individually, this is way past, he's way into his sun period by this time. That would potentially be a better time for her to have kids. So again, she may have to think of other alternative ways of having this happen, if that's what she wants, if that's the direction she wants to go in. Oh, here I wrote it down. Next book, so at age 46, so from age 46 to 49, she's running Saturn, Jupiter. So she'll still have Saturn on these things, so there'll still be a lot of anxiety. But Jupiter will be all over this chart, including it'll be exalted in the 5th house from the aspect of the 1st house. And it'll be a swa 1st house. So for her, again, and it might not, in her mind or desires, that might be like, I mean, what are you, crazy? I don't want to wait that long. But that would potentially be a better time for her, that age 46 to 49 time period. But again, it doesn't line up with Travis. So, but maybe there's a time in the sun period, maybe like the Sun Venus period. Maybe the Sun Venus period with him would line up with the Saturn Jupiter period for her, and it would be sort of a mixed bag, and but maybe better, rather than all bad for one person and all good for the other. That might be a time when things work themselves out, for both of them simultaneously. Again, if they want to wait that long, it's quite a long time to wait. If they want to be parents at that age or whatever. People are doing all kinds of things these days, but each their own. But again, in terms of the timing for them being in the same positive time period at this stage of the game, it's going to be a little tricky to work that timing out. Let's see what else it is. So Saturn, Sun. Oh, I also looked at Saturn, Sun, because Sun is fairly strong in her chart, because it's with its disposer, because Mars aspect its own house. The only thing, though, is going to be like kind of an aggressive type of authority, and Sun represents health and medicine. So this might be like a strong aggressive issue with authority, because Sun is karako bhavanasha. This might also bring in like an alternative medicine advisor, because Sun could be a doctor. I mean, this might be like a surgeon or something like that. Because also in her chart, she has Ketu and Venus in her 8th house. So there might be like a unusual gynecological issue she might be dealing with. And also in her main chart, there are indications of non-biological children. So, children through other means, like maybe a surrogate or adoption or something like that. And then her 5th house, just to remind you, her 5th house lord in her main chart is a swa, Mars and Vishaka, plus Sun in the 12th house. This might be like an aggressive kind of alternative medicine practitioner in a remote place, like maybe abroad, like adopting abroad or doing some medical procedures, in hospitals or abroad, that kind of thing, or even like a laboratory fertilization, like IVF type thing, or surrogacy. Again, those are indications in her chart. And then her 6th lord Where's her sixth lord? Is Venus in her chart, right? Yeah. And it's an Uttarashana plus Rahu. Sixth lord, the reason why the sixth lord I'm talking about that is the sixth house can indicate, again, like non-biological children, like adopted children or stepchildren, that kind of thing. And the lord is Venus and a positive house, Uttarashana plus Rahu. Rahu can symbolize like unusual or even foreign methods or things. So again, this might also indicate for her, like, adoption or IVF or surrogacy or something like that. But there can be like sudden success with alternative ways of having non-biological kids. I guess the problem, between, again, in terms of synastry, if the main reason they're getting together is to have kids, it looks like there's going to be issues with timing here. But again, it can I could see how this might be a make it or break it or thing, depending on the reasons and motivations for getting involved, and then their bond, which again I said was supportive and friendly, mostly, but not super, super strong. Um, and I think it may be workable as long as they don't force a timeline or a specific path for having kids. Then it can be worked out. But again, you see pretty consistently that this will probably be an issue. Yeah, so there you go. Okay, so I think this was the longest video I've ever recorded. I'm glad I told you guys to get some snacks. As always, thanks so much for your support on my work and the channel. All of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology and my concepts playlist, they can be found there. For more famous birth charts, check out my birth charts archive list 2025 video. For a list of those, the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel. I do offer individual birth chart readings and also information. Sorry, let me back up. So I do offer individual birth chart readings and I do offer astrology classes. So if you want information about either of those things, you can email heartletastro@yahoo.com for more info. And then I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. And then name of that channel is Nature Source Care. So that's out there too for you as a resource. So as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right. So until the next one, take good care and have a good Super Bowl and Valentine's Day. All right. Bye-bye.